So today we're going to continue our review of fiction in preparation for our upcoming test. Today we are going to be looking at a story from Grandma's Bird, written by Jack Gobelowski. And Jack Gobelowski is our author. So we're going to write author right here. We know it is an excerpt. An excerpt literally means a small portion. We're not reading the completed part, the completed story. We're only reading a small portion of it. So let's begin. Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at how many paragraphs we have. And we see in this particular passage, our paragraphs have already been numbered. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, as we read, we need to remember that this is a work of fiction. However, this work of fiction we would consider a realistic fiction. And realistic fiction literally means that this is a story that could take place in real life. So it could take place to you or I. However, it has not taken place. Therefore, it is a made-up story, but it is realistic. Okay, so let's begin reading. "I'm sorry," said the doctor. "I cannot let you take a bird in there. It's against the rules." When we see that we have quotation marks here, here, and here. So we know that the doctor is the one speaking. I wanted to cry. I tried to break away from the doctor and run back to Grandma's room, but she wouldn't let me. So I sat down on the floor and cried anyway. Peter thought I wanted to play and got excited. Quark, quark. And we see again we have quotation marks. So that lets us know that Peter is the one speaking at this moment. He squawked in his funny voice, bopping up and down across his swing. "Wake up, Grandma. Wake up, Grandma. Yummy cracker. Quark, quark. Wake up, Grandma. Wake up, Grandma." So we see, because we have quotation marks here, 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 and here, we have what is called dialogue. And dialogue, we know dialogue from our earlier stories is when dialogue is when others are speaking, but we're going to look up dialogue in our dictionary. Okay? And dialogue is a conversation between two or more persons. The conversation between characters in a novel, drama, or etc. An exchange of ideas or opinions on a particular use, especially a political or religious issue, with a view to reaching an amicable agreement or settlement. So we know dialogue is a conversation between two characters. And so in this one, our dialogue is happening between Peter, our narrator, and the doctor. Oh, let's go back and look at the dialogue that Peter uses. The words quark, quark are an example of an onomatopoeia. That is the type of figurative language in which the word literally sounds like the way it's spelled. So let's continue reading our passage. The doctor heard Peter showing off and started laughing. I see what you mean, she said. So through our knowledge of fiction and dialogue, we know that right here, the doctor must be she. He must be a good friend. The doctor looked at Peter and me for a long time. Well, now that we've set up where who's talking when, let's look at who the I is in this story. The I in this story tells us that this is a story taking place in first person point of view. And it is told the narrator is a character. So let's write that here. Our narrator is a character. Okay. So far, who are some characters within our story? Well, we have the doctor. We have Peter. And we have our narrator, I. So how's the narrator feeling right now? Well, he's feeling rather upset because he could not. And we know he's upset because it says, I sat down on the floor and cried anyway. So right here, we know he's upset. So if someone is crying, they must be upset. So let's think, what could be happening right here? Well, obviously, our narrator would like to get in to see his grandmother. So he says, my grandmother's run back to grandma's room. But a doctor is stopping him and saying, I cannot let a bird in there. It's against the rules. So let's infer, where might they be? Where do you think the setting of this story is taking place at? So if you feel like the setting of this story is in a hospital, I would think you're correct. So let's write that here. Okay. And we know that it must be at a hospital or some medical facility because we see we have a doctor talking and he's saying he wants to run back to grandma's room. So grandma must be sick in a hospital. And who is our main character? Our main character is actually our narrator. The narrator, this story is being told in first person point of view through the eyes of our narrator, through his perspective. So now let's take a look at the questions. Do you predict the doctor is going to allow the bird to stay in the hospital? Why? And give examples. So in this question, they want you to think about what you've read and decide, do you think that would happen? So I would think my prediction would be yes. Quite possibly the doctor would let the bird stay. Where do I come up with this prediction? Well, the doctor heard Peter showing off and began to laugh. And she says, I see what you mean, she said. He must be a good friend. The doctor looked at me and Peter for a long time. The fact that our narrator is telling us the doctor is looking at them for a long time is an indication that she might be thinking that the rules this one time may need to be broken. So I'm going to write the doctor will let, so the doctor will let Peter and the narrator visit. And let's make that darker so we can see it. Okay. So, action and response chart, it says, please complete the missing parts. So that means they want us to read what is going on and what the narrator did and what the doctor did based off of our story. So the doctor said the narrator could not take Peter in the room. So what did our narrator do? Well, he tried to break away from the doctor and run to grandma's room. So right here, we're going to answer. He ran and tried to go to her room. So here we see the first action is the doctor said the narrator could not take Peter in the room. Well, what did our narrator do? He ran and tried to go to grandma's room anyway. So what is the second action they're asking us to respond that one of our characters might have responded to? Peter got excited and started to show off. So right here we see the doctor heard Peter showing off. And what did she do? Well, the doctor started laughing. So let's write that here. The doctor began to laugh at Peter. Okay. So far we have established what an excerpt is, what type of fiction story this is, and we've said that this was a realistic work of fiction. We established who the author was, Jack Gabolonsky. And we know that a realistic fiction means that it is something that could happen in real life. We've also established that this work of fiction has lots of dialogue, and we know that we see dialogue when we see quotation marks and we see the word said. We know that we have three characters within this excerpt: Peter, our narrator, and the doctor, and that it must be taking place in a hospital setting or some medical facility, because it says that we have a doctor in the story and that grandma's room, and that our narrator is just trying to visit grandma. We know from our inferencing skills that anytime that we're in a medical facility, if we're trying to visit someone's room, that they may be in the hospital sick. We know that this is being told by first person point of view. So the narrator who is speaking or telling this story is one of our characters. We've also been able to make a prediction based off of this story. And the story asks us, how do we feel like the doctor is going to allow the bird to stay in the hospital? Why? Well, I think it will, because the doctor will let Peter and the narrator visit because she laughed and she realized they must be good friends. We also took a look at what action was occurring within the story, and then what the response was by another character based off of this action. So now, and finally, let's look at the excerpt and let's write a short summary of this section. Well, let's think about everything we've read. What we've read is that our narrator would like to take Peter, his bird, to visit grandma, but a doctor will not let him. Peter begins to show off, and the doctor thinks Peter is very funny. So let's write that here. The narrator is trying to visit his grandma. A doctor tells them that's not allowed with a bird. That means he couldn't visit grandma with a bird. Peter, the bird, shows off and makes the doctor laugh. So, today we have reviewed works of fiction. We reviewed a work of realistic fiction, and we know that realistic fiction is a story that could take place. So, discuss with your partner a text to self connection that you have made or could make to this work of fiction. Remember, text to self means that something that you may have experienced is similar to what is going on in the story. After you're finished, be sure to complete your follow up work looking at other works of realistic fiction.